Today I had the pleasure of being able to have a one-on-one interview with Madfindergame's Gray Zone Warfare's PR Comms Director, Rick Lagnese. And I got to ask the question you really want to hear the answer to. How many microtransactions are in the game? Now, if you take a look at my channel, you'll know this is very much outside my wheelhouse, but that's precisely why I wanted to do it. So I apologize for any rough edges ahead of time. I'm going to, for the most part, let the interview run and basically speak for itself, because it's a genuine conversation by two gamers. There will be bookmarks for specific questions below. But before we get started, I will be posting another video talking more about the info that didn't make it to the interview and my additional thoughts on my time with Rick as a whole. Hit that subscribe button and your notifications on so you see that video the moment it comes out. Thank you for watching, and here we go. All right. So thank you so much for your time, Rick. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a long weekend, so I'll just get right to it. Respect your time. Just kind of get right into it.
Sure.
Gray Zone Warfare is currently occupying a space where it's getting all kinds of comparisons. Milsim, Ghost Recon Wildlands, Arma, DayZ, Escape from Tarkov. Some of it's fair, some of it maybe not. Which tells me it's attracting a lot of different players, which is a good thing. But you're also getting a ton of feedback from different places. How does the team balance what they, pay more attention to, what they don't? What's the guiding principle?
Well, I'm thankful that I have two community managers who scour, well, actually, I should say three. We have one guy who's so focused on Steam, and then we have the other two guys that cover everything else. So as you can imagine, Discord, Reddit. And yeah, we get compared to all sorts of games. And I think for me, at the end of the day, I'm a gamer too. Mm-hmm. So if I'm playing a game that's like Dark Souls, I call it a Souls-like, even though I barely know anything about the game, because that's my first impression. Mm-hmm. And first impression is important. I think, just like our co-founder, creative director, and he's a programmer for the AI in the game, mm-hmm. I think that we're really enjoying doing our own thing. We're all FPS gamers. Mm-hmm. We all are. We all love playing tactical shooters. My favorite, and I've said it many times, is Ghost Recon. I absolutely love it. I get vibes from that. Some of our team gets vibes from Tarkov. Some of our team gets vibes from Rust. You could go on and on and on. So it's more about us doing our own game, and that's what we like to think about as the path that we're carving to maybe help complement the genre.
Gotcha.
So, that was a good PR response. I just realized.
That was solid. Like it was practiced.
So PR at the end.
But hey, you're the PR guy. I would hope you're good at it.
Yeah.
But in that vein, in regards to feedback, when Gray Zone Warfare was announced, it was marketed as a PvEVP game, and while the E aspect has always been emphasized, later it was announced that it would be a PvE only server option.
Yeah.
Was this always something you were leaning towards, or this came purely from feedback?
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, even when we got the feedback, you have different opinions at the office. Now, I work remotely, to be fair, mm-hmm. but everyone's very passionate about this and what do we want to do, because we really want that PvP part to still be an important factor of the game, mm-hmm. regardless of how often it happens.
Right.
The intensity of it and the threat of not knowing when someone's coming around the corner, and you don't take those moments for granted because they don't happen like they might in other games. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was purely based off feedback, because we want to really, one of the things that I like about games the most is options. Mm-hmm. And over time, we're going to keep adding different options to Gray Zone. One of them being immediate or come early access is the PvE option. And we're really glad to have that, because the way I see it is, if someone wants to dare walk in a server with me in it with PvP, just watch your back. But then that's me. Watch your back, because I dare you to come after me to think mm-hmm. you had your fun in PvE, now I hope you're ready.
Right.
I also like the fact of them getting what they get in PvE and them coming over, and guess what? If they bring that out in the field, mm-hmm. and I take them out, guess what I'm doing? I'm taking their gear.
Taking their gear.
Right.
So that answers my next question in terms of the progression following from PvE to PvP servers. Being basically definite, if I'm hearing that correctly.
Oh, so what you're hearing is this, mm-hmm.
that
and this is what I always say, we have a lot that we're working on.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to balance, that is a huge thing, and that's something that's going to be ongoing. So pretty soon, we're going to talk about some our vision for what we're going to try and do by early access, and then what we're going to do going afterwards. But we have to find the right balance, and to be truthful right now, we don't know how often you're going to encounter other players. We can only test that so much, and then we're going to open up the servers. And what happens when people are playing in a live server and you jump into a server or actually that's already happening? So is it 90-10, 80-20, 70-30? There's a lot of factors for us to determine what the balance is going to be.
For sure. And so this may be a difficult question to answer then, because of the fact that you still don't have that full information. So like the most common concern that I've seen for this question being in an affirmative, where you do follow the progress, is that it would incentivize you going to PvE, farming up gear, and then going to PvP and headhunting, right? I've tested a game that I'm under NDA that I can't talk about that did something very similar, and that exact thing panned out. What are things you're looking for in terms of like tweaking or just kind of keeping an eye on to see help prevent that, or just like help smooth that process over to kind of either keep that process or just make a separation?
Well, it's just like you said, you had experienced this before, but that was for that game.
Right, of course.
Right.
Not fair to make the comparison, but like
no, but but I get it, and I get the point behind that. And I'll just say this, that it's kind of what I was alluding to before. Number one, for me personally, there are guys in the studio that prefer the PvP. There are other guys that are PvE. For sure. So again, when it comes to options, we really want to have that. But when someone comes in, again, like I'm saying, whether they felt like they had an advantage because the players weren't in there or something. And by the way, there will be other players in the PvEs. You just can't kill them,
right?
Kind of thing. How often do you run into them? And that we've already talked about that. But when they get that gear, whatever that gear is, and if they feel like they've advanced more than myself, like I said, they can bring that in,
right?
And if I find them and I loot it, they just did all that hard work for who?
They're just going to Uber tech gear for you. Just going to bring that. They just want to deliver that guest for you.
And it's not just that simple. So like I said, we have more to talk about balances and stuff. And also, to be quite honest, we have still a lot to learn because this is going to be ongoing. This is why it's a game as a service, because we're going to find out the balance by working more closely with our fans. For sure. Creators.
Right.
Whole 9 yards.
Right. And so given you talked about there's lots of options and people like those options, and there's all these different varieties even within the office, which I imagine is also tenfold in the community.
Sure.
Like previous interviews have indicated that you guys are playing around with the idea of custom servers, right? As a possibility. Because I can easily see two different custom servers that would be night and day. Like I can be, all right, let's go ahead and make a 16-player, squad, and we're going to take on the campaign. No response. We just keep going until either we all die or we finish the campaign. Super, like just co-op. Obviously, it's going to be a PvE experience versus the other idea of having players play as the internal factions of the island, and PMCs basically vying for control. So there's entirely two different ideas. I can see custom servers really drawing players in that either or maybe not appeal to the vanilla idea, or have more or less played it out and goes, well, let me try a new experience. Like those are obviously shot in the darks. These are, fantastical ideas, but nonetheless give you options. Like what is just your thoughts on just the idea of custom servers for Gray Zone Warfare?
Well, first off, I like customization. I like custom. I mean, I like, private servers versus public, ranked or whatever. Now that doesn't really apply to Gray Zone as much in terms of the competition aspect necessarily. But the thing of it is, you said campaign. I mean, if you think about it, some of these quests can take hours because we're not going to hold your hand. You have to find out where to go. So when you're thinking of just having a game night with the guys, if you have a few hours, that could literally be one quest. Maybe it's 3 quests. Maybe it's 5, right? But I think in the end, we want to find as many options as we can. These are more things that we're considering throughout the progression of Gray Zone as, this is a project that we plan on adding to for years to come. You're not going to see the full vision of Gray Zone at early access. It's impossible. Of course. Early access, we've gotten used to calling early access the release date now.
Of course.
Yeah. And it is a release, but it's the initial.
Right.
So
and
stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and oftentimes games do get judged unfairly because the players they just see it as the release, and for all intents and purposes for them physically, they download the game, they play the game, they release the game. They just judge it completely on that, and then they don't come back, and that's their loss. In a lot of cases, some of these games go on to, like Radio Night is a great example. They can have their release full on and just huge patches. Like if you never came back to experience that game, you're lost. Same thing is probably going to happen with Gray Zone Warfare. There's going to be the game that's going to happen on release will probably look so much better than early access, and it's fair to ask players to be patient with that. So on that note, in terms of options, I know with early access you cannot give hey, we have these things are going to be here versus things we want to plan for in the future. There's a delicate balance to nailing down the stuff that's important first. With that in mind, based off the information we have, it seems like the end game is basically the center of the island is this event that's kind of like still in hush-hush mode, very, very covert, but it seems like the drive is to have the PMCs work their way towards the center, the hardest of the content, and that's where they're likely to have the most PvP. Is that an accurate assessment? And if it is, what's your end game? What do you want it to look like?
Yeah, I guess you could say it's a good possibility because the way you play the game, you can completely even avoid ground zero. Now we know when that actually is implemented fully, right? It's going to clearly be a big area of interest. Yeah. And PMCs, see, we worked with, as you may be aware, Dr. Sean McFate, military strategist, right? Advises the Pentagon, has served on multiple PMCs. This guy knows his stuff.
Right.
And he said one of the biggest things that PMCs do is one of their missions to usually collect rare artifacts, right? So there's going to be an interest for ground zero. People might try for kicks, I guess, to run through the radiation, the toxicity. You won't be able to make it at the start of early access, but I'm sure people are going to try and see if they can find a magical way. But the thing is ground zero won't be available yet. But getting to your point is, yeah, I think there's going to be areas that certainly people get more intrigued by, that they're going to run more to, right? And it will be very interesting to see over time how this game evolves to where people start to find the even quicker routes to ground zero. Maybe it's not just straight north or south or whatever. So they find quicker ways. And what happens when you get better at a game, you will find more PvP encounter. You just got to have a good squad, let alone you have 16, 15 other players on that faction. Work together well, and it's not going to be a cakewalk. And also, we have a lot of plans. You're not just going to be fighting criminals in ground zero. So
I would hope not, because obviously you look at the lore, it's rife for all kinds of like ex-military from that country. They're trying to cut their own power grabs and have all this surplus equipment that's left over.
They're still pros.
So it's like there's still pros out there. We've seen all of like the behind the scenes footages in regards to like motion capture, all the different weapons that are going to be available. So it's really kind of exciting.
Yeah, they're actually scanned weapons. There's nothing like same with the thing with the assets. They're not scanned assets. They're actually operated by SOF, spicy. So
fantastic. And with that in mind, like you said, in terms of having these 16 other operators, right? I can totally see dropping in with my buddies. We're in the fob and we see another squad and we're like, hey, this mission, wouldn't it be a lot easier if we had 8 people instead of 4? Like, so are there tools that are going to be either available early access or ones that you want to implement later on that help facilitate that kind of cooperation, like maybe unit patches, hand signals, radio channels, GPS devices, things of that nature?
Right now, you'll have the simple things of like being able to text in the menu with other players. You'll be able to squad it with up to 4, and for starters, we'll have VoIP too. So that'll help a lot. I mean, because ideally, if there was 15 other guys, you could. If you're close enough, you can talk to all of them, right? So there will be more stuff we add. I feel like it's hard to just want to say specifics or even assume based on what we can and can't get in. But there will be other ideas that we want to come up with that's going to make it more easier to communicate. In the beginning also, and we kind of do like the immersion of where you need to really be careful because friendly fire is on. Outside of the base, it's on. So you really got to watch that's again why we say every move matters. And so, but we will over time add things to maybe differentiate, of course, the cosmetics and stuff like that. So in terms of the squad and stuff, there's plans, but at least we have the VoIP.
Yeah, for sure.
And the squatting of up to 4.
With that being said, any plans for clans, guilds, things of that nature, or is that just too soon to be telling at this point?
I think that's something that, we might want to consider. Yeah, absolutely. But again,
it's too soon.
Yeah,
I know it's just one of those things where it's an organizational thing, so I feel like it kind of lends itself in that way.
We have no problem saying that early. Well, we are pretty happy about 150 quests at early access.
That's amazing. I gotta say that's pretty ambitious, and so I'm excited to get into that.
Yeah, and you have 3 vendors to start, and then you unlock 3 as you progress. But there are going to be some things that might seem a little vanilla-ish, if you will, because again, we're just getting started, and a lot of it is, we have a vision, we're going to stick to it no matter what. But honestly, if if things go well, it certainly helps for the future.
Okay. Yeah. And so, as we talked about before, with regards to PvE servers coming from feedback, based on that, one of the things that we talked about earlier was basically players self-selecting their way out of the standard servers, inadvertently leaving those slots open for players who are more likely to want to have PvP. In my estimation, that just inherently just makes the whole server more aggressive, right? Is that a concern? Are you guys neutral about that? You guys kind of wait and see to see how that pans out? Like,
honestly, it's hard to say whether it's a concern or not, because this game is, everyone likes to think their game is different, but I do think, and it's true, every game does have its differences, but it's one of those things where we really need to see this being played out. Now, I don't mind the aggressive wanting to hunt players down, but again, at the same time, it's not a walk in the park.
Right.
So you're going to find that, it's kind of like when you're you think you're the best kid on the block, and you play with all the kids in the neighborhood, and you feel like you're really good. Yeah. But then you play online, and you realize I have a long way to go.
That was Halo 2 for me.
So,
my next question is going to be regarding solos and small teams. I know there's some players who just opt to not want to interact with new people. They don't want to go that route, or they have their specific friend, and they want to have just them involved, right? Will there be an outlet for players who just want to play solo or play with their one or two friends, or are they stuck playing with the full four-man squad?
Yeah, no, they're not stuck at all. They can just play alone if they want and enjoy themselves. I will say it is harder for sure to play alone. What happens when you lose 50% of your blood? Well, at least in our game, you go into a coma, right? And then you have 2 minutes. And now you can try and just skip that, almost like we're definitely way less arcadey than like Gears of War, for example, where the cogwheels, you're bleeding out. But no, you really, it is better to have someone support you, to be with you. But you can if you want. And in fact, I know there's players that are going to play them themselves, and I might want to occasionally. So you absolutely can. You're not forced.
For sure. In regards to the survival elements of the game, you saw that there was food, there was water. How much of a factor did you want that to be part of the experience?
Well, this game has survival elements, right? But I certainly wouldn't call it like a survival game. And reason being is we want you to really focus ultimately on the core gameplay. But if you're not keeping up with your health, so to speak, and you can start to get like fainty, your vision can blur. It can affect your sight, your stamina, of course. So you need to make sure you're keeping yourself fed, but you're not going to die.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so last one. Okay. So this is really, really important. I want to make sure we get this on camera. How many microtransactions are in the game?
Let's see. 1,025.
1,025?
Zero.
Okay. Zero. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Like, sub, and comment. Thank you for watching, and good hunting.